getting to know yourself. I mean, I personally don't think you can really know yourself entirely. Like, I think you're a constant discovery, but I do think you can get to know yourself in a way that you don't. And what I mean by that is a lot of the things that we might think we like or think we believe might have been things that people in our school liked, or, what our parents kind of told us to believe and stuff like this. And that's where you don't really know yourself, because really what you are is a copy of what you've learned, or what, your peers kind of asked of you to get acceptance. This is Way of the Artist with Brandon Colby Cook and Evan Schulte.
Identifying your blocks and demystifying your struggles
so that you can claim your own path
and make your life a work of art. All right, recording. Well, I guess that was unnecessary. I didn't need to do the clap. But what do you think of this? Everybody, what do you think of this? This is actually kind of a special podcast because we're in the same room. How long has it been since we've been in the same room?
Man, I don't even know. It's been a while. It's been a while.
It's been too long.
Yeah.
It has been too long due to all kinds of factors and goings-ons in the world and in our lives.
Yeah.
But this is great. So this is just going to be kind of a shorter one.
That's the plan.
We think that's the plan, but who knows with us. Oftentimes it's like, oh, we'll keep it shorter. And it's like basically an hour later, and here we are. So what do you think of this? We kind of just jumped into this conversation. Not necessarily as a question to you as in the audience about this particular episode, but the statement itself of what do you think of this? The power of that question, where that can lead us, where we can go. I don't know. What do you think of this? I think that I don't know. I think this is going to be a good one. I think it's going to be a good one.
It's kind of like giving attention to something that interests you, or that you're curious about, or that, I don't know, you never really thought about more than a little bit. And maybe it's kind of like, well, what do I think about this? What do you think about this? And maybe it's a question you ask someone else. Maybe it's something you ask yourself. It's kind of like, maybe if you just give it a little attention and interest. And I think also one of the things that kind of I liked about this idea when you suggested it was a lot of this podcast kind of came out of that concept. It was kind of like, I'm dealing with this thing in the industry and blah, 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 blah. What do you think about it? And blah, blah, blah. And it would be like, okay. And a conversation would come out of that. And we really discussed some really great stuff. At least we thought so. And well, we recorded a bunch of these. And that's a lot of these topics and ideas that we come up with are things that it's like, yeah, what do we think about this? And
mm-hmm.
and then when we get into it, we always seem to like walk away with so much more. And so we thought, well, why not talk about the process a little bit? Also, someone asked us, like, so you guys just kind of sit down and you just talk? And it's kind of like, yeah, it's like we do, but we're kind of like, well, what do you think of this? And that actually is often what the episode becomes.
Yeah. It starts off as just like, just this like a seed of something, like just an inkling very often. I think that's so true of so many creative processes and and even just thinking about like where I've spent most of my time as like an actor, like what do you think of this is like that can just lead to so many bigger things. And definitely, as you said, with this podcast, that's such a major thing that maybe we don't specifically ask that question of like, what do you think of this? But, we'll talk about, it's like, well, like what's been going on for you? Like, what have you been thinking about? What are you curious about? What, anything that's been kind of interesting and inspiring, that sort of, I think that, that sort of question of what do you think of this is sort of built into some of those things. And by putting your attention on it as you said, like putting your attention on something, as I've said so many times, is magic. Attention
It
is
is
magic because there's like maybe just barely something there, but there's something that's just like, but there's something that's real, even if it's just in a very small stage, and you put your attention on it, and suddenly all of these things just start appearing. All of these things just start kind of coming up. And that's an incredible thing. And I think that that's part of the power of creative, open looking, which, comes with that. What do you think of this?
I think it's a good tool to use in a lot of ways. Like, it's a great creative tool to use, like where you go like, well, I want to maybe write a script or a novel just as an idea. And you might go, well, what do I think about, what's going on in the world today? What do I think about this specific issue? Or, it also it's a more creative way to go on a date, for example. Like maybe you're across from somebody and you're trying to figure out like, what do we talk about? How do I connect with this person? It's a good question to ask. Like, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that? Or, what's your interest here? Or, what do you, maybe something about them. So you go, what do you like about this thing over here? Or, and something I learned when I was younger, and I think is a really good idea, was that the best people ask the best questions. And I think that's very true, because when you look at people or when you interact, I should say, with people who don't have a lot going on in their life, they tend to talk about other people. They tend to talk about the weather. They talk about things that are very, it's not that they're necessarily boring, but it's that they're so like, you can hear them and talk about them and forget them the next moment, and they don't leave any impact on you. They're not memorable. They don't matter. The only thing that really you could argue mattered was it was like nice connecting and talking with this person, even if all we talked about was how friggin' hot it is right now or how much it's raining. But really, if you want to get into it with somebody, you want to talk about something of more substance. And I think this is a good question to kind of go like, I don't know, like if you, especially I think it's very helpful if you have a little bit of like, when it comes to other people, like something about them. Like, for example, I know that you like guitar. I know you like playing it. I know you like guitar riffs and music. And I'm like, well, what do you like about it? Like, why is that? Why are you so drawn to that? And then you're going to answer and you're going to tell me some things about it. And it's going to open up a conversation. I might learn something. And then through learning something from you, then I'm going to go, oh, interesting. So what is that difficult to do or something? It's like, oh, yeah, that's really difficult. And actually, it's like to do this would require blah, 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 blah. And it's like, oh, interesting. Right. And now all of a sudden you guys are talking about stuff that actually matters to you. It's way more interesting and way more involved and way more personal.
Yeah.
Plus, another side note of this, and I think this is an applicable thing on many levels, but when you ask something of someone and you're interested in something that they actually care about, it's a world of difference.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a terrific way of building connections, learning something new, and creating like an open space for an exchange of ideas as well. One thing I also want to point out in this conversation, this sort of like that's sort of, posing that question to somebody else. And that's an important part of this for sure. But also I think this is like when we're saying like, it's like, what do you think about this? It's also a question of for yourself saying, what do I think?
Yes.
Like, what do I think? And I think this is, bizarrely, I think this is something that can get lost in people. I know that it's definitely something that can get lost in my own life where, I think that so much of the way that, we kind of get brought up in like our culture and expectations and, all of the stuff that comes with.
I'm having...
So Suri jumped in for the conversation.
Oh my goodness.
Suri, I'm having...
Get out of here. Get out of here.
I don't even know how that happened.
She was interested in getting in on the conversation too.
What do you think
sorry.
about this?
But anyhow, sometimes I think that in my own life, especially when I was younger, I really didn't I don't think I really valued my own sort of thoughts and opinions a great deal, or my feelings. It was kind of like that's a secondary thing. That was just, I don't know, however that kind of got put into myself, but so often we'll say things that we think other people will like. We'll do things that we think other people will like. Not we will not allow certain emotions to come out at certain times because we don't think that's appropriate. And the sort of repression of yourself is a really unhealthy thing. And I remember when I decided to do this, like journaling is always a terrific thing. Brandon, I know you've got like a nice long, you've just hit like a milestone in how many days in a row you've like journaled now and done writing.
It's been 9 years now, over 3,300 something days. I don't know, something like that, close to maybe 3,200, somewhere around there. Yeah, 9 years.
And counting, right?
And counting, yeah.
And that's a very useful practice, and that's something that I started doing, and it was something that helped me to start getting connected to sort of the stuff that was in me, which was something I started doing that because of The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, and that's sort of like an essential thing, the daily pages she calls it, where it's sort of like you do 3 pages of journaling, stream of consciousness, you don't stop yourself, you just kind of spill. And stuff comes out in there that surprises you. And then I started doing some other stuff as well, where I was, discovering sort of, or I would come up with, some big themes, big topics, right? And like religion and family and war and nations, like just these kinds of big, broad ideas and themes and stuff that we live in, that we are immersed in, and just starting like, okay, I'm just going to start writing about this. What do I think about these things? And starting to really discover things about myself, starting to discover my voice in a certain degree. And these things can change, obviously, like opinions and thoughts and feelings are fluid. But it's something that can help us get connected to ourselves. And, if you're a creative or an artist, I mean, I think that's absolutely essential. But as a human being, I think it's terrific to get a sense of who you are in this whole thing.
Yeah.
Called life.
Well, getting to know yourself. I mean, I personally don't think you can really know yourself entirely. Like, I think you're a constant discovery, but I do think you can get to know yourself in a way that you don't. And what I mean by that is a lot of the things that we might think we like or think we believe might have been things that people in our school liked, or, what our parents kind of told us to believe and stuff like this. And that's where you don't really know yourself, because really what you are is a copy of what you've learned, or what, your peers kind of asked of you to get acceptance and things like this. Mm-hmm. So, I think this question can be applicable in certain ways. It's like, well, everybody's likes a movie, or everybody likes something, or everybody's into something, or everybody's against somebody or something. You go, what do I think about that? What are my thoughts on that? And you might start to go, you know what? Yeah, I mean, I see everybody kind of sees it this way, but I actually see it, this other way. And that can be a very self-realizing type of thing to actually work out for yourself, because so much of how we live our lives is through peer pressure and social pressures and things like that. And, they say, there's a saying, you are a product of the 5 people you spend the most amount of time with, which is mostly true, because what will happen is people you spend a lot of time with, you'll tend to model, you'll tend to copy, you'll tend to agree with. And out of sheer convenience of just getting along, if they have a point of view, you'll tend to be more open to taking that on. And it can get quite tribal too, because now you have people who maybe have an opposing view to your group, and that can almost be threatening to your group, and you can be like, well, we're against that. And it's like, you might stop and go, but are you really against that? Like, or are you really for that? And maybe you never critically thought that one out for yourself. So I think it's a really good exercise for this. And I think that's important because as a creative, the only way you're going to do anything authentic and original and truly like signature to you is to get down to the truth, or at least more of the truth of what you actually are. If you just say, I'm going to still be liked by everybody, I'm going to be agreeable with everybody, I'm not going to ever go against the status quo, and I'm somehow still going to create some type of authentic original art, I mean, I think you're just fooling yourself. So these types of questions can be a way for you to, kind of drill in past the surface of who you think you are, and maybe dig down and go, well, you know what? Yeah, on the surface, I play this game with everybody, but really deep down, I don't know if I really agree with that. I don't know if I'm really on board for that. And you don't have to change it all today, but you can start to have that recognition. And, you'd be surprised too, because people who think one way and you've been thinking this way with them, like an example I think is good. You have your friends. Maybe you partied with them all through your early 20s. You know what I mean? Maybe in your 30s, maybe your 40s, maybe 50s, whatever. But they're your party friends, and you party together, and they're and everybody wants to go, and everybody wants to drink, and everybody wants to do their things. And you're starting to feel like, yeah, I don't really want to go out and drink. I don't want to go on a bender or party or do this stuff, or I don't want to go to the club. I think it's a waste of money. But everyone's like, we're going to go to the club this weekend, da 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 da. And it's like, other people in your group might be thinking what you're thinking. But because you're all in the inertia of agreeing with each other, and no one's really talking about what they really think about the club, and they're all, you're all starting to grow out of it. Maybe you got that one person that hasn't, but the rest of you are starting to grow out of it. And then, you might start going, well, what do I really think about this? And then it might be a conversation you have with one of your buddies that you go to the club with, or one of your girls you go to the club with, or whoever. And you might just say, like, what do you think about this? Like, you think, is this still fun? Like, yeah, it's, you start to hear the actual thoughts, and then things can move away from that, as opposed to maybe you grow apart, or you just keep doing the thing you don't want to do.
Yeah, and instead of people just sort of quietly drifting away,
yeah,
and no one seems to understand how or why that's all happened.
Yes.
And yeah, and the thing is too, and just slight change of gears, not really, kind of going back to something you said earlier, but when you ask somebody what they think, about something, like really kind of getting into something with most people really respond really quite well to it. Most people aren't really used to being asked.
Yes.
Like sort of big questions, like we're so used to just keeping things on a surface level. And don't get me wrong, like there's a place for that.
Yeah.
There's we talk about a lot of big stuff here, at least I think we do. But, every now and then I'm just like, I can't. Like, I can't. Like, you're just, sometimes you're in a place like, I can't do it. Can we just talk about, a TV show or a movie, or, like something not crazy. Although usually when we end up talking about TV shows or movies, we end up getting into like the nitty gritty of it, but
yeah, we might not want to talk about, or, one of us might not want to talk about something directly. Like, we might not want to get into whatever topic, and then it's like, let's just do something easy, and then we start watching a movie, and then we start about getting into the details of a movie, which we never planned on, but we got excited about it, we got interested in it, and we went down that rabbit hole.
Yeah,
but it wasn't the intention. You find yourself there. I think you're right. I mean, I think that this question is something that you got to be mindful. You don't just push it on somebody if the window isn't really available, and if someone's in a rush and they don't really have time to give you much more detailed of an answer or talk, or you haven't really earned their attention, like they don't know you well enough, or you haven't built that rapport yet, it might not be the best time to ask this question. But you know, you always have yourself. You can always ask it to yourself.
Yeah.
But, you know, sometimes, and I also think, I just have to say this because, like, what you were saying about not wanting, can we not do this right now? Like, I have times like that. Like, people want to talk about, you know, pandemic or something like that. I'm like, I don't want to talk about this shit, you know? Like, I don't.
Yeah.
And I have lots of thoughts. I have lots of opinions. I have lots of ideas. And,
Yeah.
but I don't want to get into that. That's not where I want to put my energy right now. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, like, let's not do that. Let's talk about something else. And, you know, that can be a good break from some of this stuff too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is important.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if I brought us off topic.
No, I don't think
my
so.
My point was just that, yeah, sometimes you don't want to get into something. And I think maybe you kind of go like, well, let's put it's attention, right? It's like, let's put our attention somewhere else.
Yeah.
Let's just not put it on that. Let's not put it on trying to have a deep conversation, or let's not put it on this hot button topic, or let's not put it on this passion that we have even right now. Cause like, I just don't want to do it right now, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And maybe direct it somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I think something that kind of came up was, you know, this thing about critical thinking. I was just thinking, like, that's interesting because, like, you know, a lot of people don't necessarily think of artists and creatives as being critical thinkers. You know, it's like it's like a lot of people think of like artists and creatives as sort of being like, oh, they're like floopy and sporadic and erratic and spontaneous. And I was just like, actually, like, really great artists and a lot of the artists that I've known are like incredible critical thinkers. You know, not all, but
not all.
Not all, but there's a lot for sure. It's a lot for sure.
It's a good skill to build. I mean, I don't think a lot of people actually know how to critically think. I think people think they're critical thinkers, and I think that they do a very good job at making an attempt at it. But if you've never learned the skills of critical thinking and what it actually is, it's a skill set. It's like saying, "Oh, I'm a critical thinker," and you never like it's like saying, "I can play guitar," and you've never learned chords. And then, yeah, you can strum it and you can play and you can make some sounds and you might be able to figure out a few combinations that kind of sound okay. But like, you don't really know how to play the guitar because there's these things that have been sorted out. And when it comes to critical thinking, there's a whole kind of branch of philosophy around critical thinking, which is about putting a logical argument together. And I think when you learn some critical thinking skills like chords on a guitar, you learn how to actually play with an argument in a much more interesting way. So one of the lessons, just to kind of give people an idea of what I'm talking about, that I learned was, let's say I want to make a statement, you know, like cats are better than dogs or dogs are better than cats, whichever it might be, right? I'm not trying to make this argument, but let's just say I wanted to.
Yeah.
Now, the way you'd put this together is you have this argument. Now it's like, okay, we'll come up with some premises, you know, like maybe 3 premises to back that up. So you say, well, you know, dogs are more playful than cats. Dogs come, you know, when cats won't, and the dogs always greet me at the door. It's like, okay, well, do all dogs always greet everyone at the door? It's like, no. Okay, so that isn't really totally worked out yet. Are all dogs like friendly and happy to see their owners, you know, or people in general? No, some bite, some are growl, some do. Okay, so that isn't actually solid. So a lot of time people's arguments are based on personal experience and not on, and they're trying to make an argument that say dogs are better than cats. And it's like, your dog might be great and your experiences with dogs might be great. Mm-hmm. But to say that all dogs are now great because your experiences are great is faulty logic, right? Yeah. And, you know, putting attention on something that you think and having those skills to be able to go, wait a minute, maybe I haven't fully baked this. Maybe this is a half-baked idea. And that can be a really fun exercise because then you go, okay, well, you know, you might start to go, well, some dogs are it's funny. Some dogs are more playful than cats, and you go, okay, how much of this argument can you really say? And then at the end of the day is like, you might find yourself going, when I started this argument, I believed dogs were better than cats. But if you gave it attention, you might go, you know what? Cats are pretty cool and dogs are pretty cool. And you know what? Rabbits are pretty cool. And there's a bunch of other animals.
We got rabbits in you now.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's like, it's just, I'm saying that sometimes we're so linear in our point of view. And that's why, like, this question is like, what do you think about this? And if you have some skills to maybe like look at the logic of it, you can actually argue yourself out of a limiting point of view where it's like, I like dogs and I only like dogs. It's like, well, there's no problem if you like cats too. It doesn't mean that there's a problem. And just because you like cats doesn't mean you can't like dogs. But there's people can get in this very linear, like, it's cats versus dogs, and it's like, and you could put that blanket idea onto just about any issue in the world.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's like, we're not talking about cats and dogs anymore, are we?
We're talking about the birds and the bees now.
Yeah.
Well, men and women, it's the same shit, man. It's like, women are better than whatever. Like, you see kids do this stuff, right? And it's like, I mean, look, I think you give something attention and maybe you don't try to be right, but you try to actually find out. You can open up your mind. You can actually be a more holistic type of person.
Yeah, and I think that you can, by asking that question more regularly and having dialogues with other people, but also, doing stuff like journaling about stuff for yourself. Like, I think that that can help you develop. It can help you develop your thoughts. It can help you to develop those skills. It doesn't mean, oh, you've got to go and you've got to learn how to be, the most incredible, critical thinker out there. You can go and learn some skills. There's nothing wrong with doing that, but you can start like right away. Like it's nothing. There's nothing there to stop you. But getting yourself engaged in that is extremely useful. And because I think that sometimes, in many ways, like you can surprise people, or you can even surprise yourself, even with some of the stuff that will come out of you. There's like I can't remember which, it's like one of Henry David Thoreau's books. I think it's like the Merrimack River, something. He was like floating down a river, I think, with his brother on a boat, and he's doing this writing. And like, I just remember that he has this one passage where he's like, they're going down this river and there's these farmers, and he was just like, and he was looking at it, he's like, if that farmer had like the words of a poet, like the things that they could say, about this land that they know, that they work, that they, like the insights that, we could glean would be just be incredible.
Yes.
Kind of thing. And yeah, like, I thought that was such a beautiful, maybe it's just a sentiment, but I like to think that there's something that when people have a chance, you give people a chance, they can offer something really interesting, and when you give people kind of credit and be open to something, I think most people can think of a time when somebody really, really surprised them with their thought on something. Like, even recently, when we took like a week off, like a little while ago, and I was visiting my my mother-in-law, for a couple of days, and there was a number of discussions that were had, and at one point she shared something with my wife and I, and she was just like, she's like, well, she's like, my dad used to always say, believe none of what you hear and half of what you see. And I was just like, whoa. Like, what like, I was just sort of shocked by this sort of these words of wisdom that came from her. Not that she's an unintelligent human being, not at all, but it was just like, it was something that was just so relevant to the conversation that we were having, and something that was so insightful to the conversation that we were having. And so, when you give people the opportunity, there's you might get something. You might find these little treasures that people have to offer.
And you can find out about people. I mean, you take that saying, right? I've heard that saying before: "Believe none of what you hear and half of what you see."
Oh, I'd never heard it before.
Yeah, well, you're late to the party.
I guess so.
But I mean, that's a good one where you can go, well, what do you think about that? And it can be kind of insightful. You can find out about somebody. I mean, I think there's something really interesting in that thought. I mean, it's like people tell you stuff all the time, and I think a lot of us take people at face value and we want to hear what they have to say and all of this, and it's kind of like, okay, well, look, I'm not going to not necessarily not believe you. Like just for an example, like I'm not going to necessarily not believe you, but it's just words. Like you're telling me this, and I'm going to kind of assume that that's probably true, but I'm not going to, I wouldn't put my money on it. I'm not going to bank on it if I don't know you. But if I start seeing you do what you're saying you're going to do, well, if I see you do it once, I mean, that's kind of like, I'm not going to fully necessarily believe it, but I've seen it. I have a lot more proof. I've definitely been duped by people who have told me how they are, and then I got to see how they are, and you're like, oof, I really kind of slipped on that one, And I had a friend point out to me one time, he's like, yeah, man, just like, look, don't just believe what people say. You gotta like, you have a good heart, and you want to trust people, and you want to do that, and it's a good thing about you, but just take it with a grain of salt and wait until you see it, and this requires now, what do I think about that? I might ask myself, well, okay, you need more patience with people. That's kind of what I started to think about. Okay, you need more patience with people. Don't assume you know somebody before you know them. And it was, kind of an insightful idea, right? It gets you to kind of maybe like, it's not that I'm skeptical of everyone. It's not that I'm going to doubt everybody. It's kind of like, okay, what you need to do is you need to not decide you know somebody before you really know them. You need to give them more of a chance to show you who they are before they tell you who they are, because people will talk all day. Oh yeah, I'm like this. I'm super loyal. I'm always honest, blah, 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 blah. People say stuff like this all the time. And I found that it's actually quite funny. You'll find a lot of people, and I think they truly believe this when they're saying it, actually, a lot of the time. And then all of a sudden, they're doing the thing that's not very honest, and they're doing the thing that's not very loyal. And it's like, wow, they think they're that way, but then when you really see them in action, it's like, no, they're not that way, Or I heard someone say, I'm not how'd they put it? Something like, I don't hold a grudge. And then meanwhile, like they were like spiteful against someone. It's like, you don't hold a grudge? I don't think you know what a grudge is. Like, I'm thinking in my mind, I'm like, now you told me that you're not like, you don't hold grudges.
Yeah.
But now you're telling me how you have spite towards this person. But I don't think you understand that your feelings of spite are a grudge. But I don't think they actually even saw that.
Yeah.
And, so I think catching them talk about someone spitefully is actually them in action. And them telling you, I'm not this way, is them just talking. And it's, I think that's a long-standing wisdom for that reason. It's like, and so, yeah, it's good to go. Like, well, what do you think about that? Some people might have a different opinion. Maybe it means trust nobody and never trust them. And like, fuck people, It's like, well, that's interesting point of view. You know what I mean? I'm not saying it's wrong, but it's like, well, that's kind of how you navigate the world, right? Then you get to know that person, right? Another thing, just to take this into maybe a more artistic thing is like, well, so you're maybe working on a character in a scene as an actor, or maybe you're doing it as a writer and you're trying to create a character in your movie. What does this person think about this? What do they think about that? Because that can start to get you to have really unique characters. Because now, like, well, this guy, he doesn't mind, doesn't even care. It's actually a non-issue to him. But to her, this pisses her off. Like, this, like, keeps her up at night. Like, it really bothers her. And then all of a sudden you got these two people, and when you understand like what matters to them and what they think about, you're going to be able to craft better dialogue and better personality. Like more true, unique personality will come out of it. As an example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not just necessarily as an actor, but as a writer and
Sure.
stuff like that too. Yeah.
Well, Linda Darlow, who's someone, we both worked with, one of her things is when you do a scene, you kind of need to know, like, do I like this person or do I not like this person?
Yeah.
It's a good thing to figure out.
Yeah, just a very, yeah.
What do I think about this person? Do I like him or not like him? It doesn't have to be deep. It just, do I like him or not like him?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. It doesn't always have to be, in fact, very often simplicity is always the better way to go.
Right.
Just like, yeah. Oh, that's a whole different shoot to go down to. I don't think this is the one to do it, but yeah, absolutely.
Rabbit holes. Hey man, I'm getting really low on beer, so let's talk about it.
All right.
We've been drinking this one all weekend.
Yeah.
And I forget the name of it.
What it is.
But it's hibiscus raspberry something.
It's hibiscus. I think it's just a hibiscus raspberry ale.
Okay.
Yeah, hibiscus raspberry ale, and this is from the 101 brewery in Gibson's, British Columbia.
More specifically, Seashell, right?
No, it's Gibson's.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's in the township of Gibson's.
Oh yeah, it is. Oh yeah, that's right. That's where we got it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you were thinking about the other place. We've been doing some beer touring because
Yeah, I'm out visiting, and we're it's amazing. But yeah, no, this has been a good beer. It's got I would say if anyone ever got it, I do like it. The raspberry's tame enough. The hibiscus I always find is a nice flavor, and it's very tasty, but it's also subtle. But it does have a little bit. You'd almost think maybe this is like bordering sour. It has a little bit of that.
Just a bit, but it's
touch.
But I still wouldn't classify it as a sour.
I wouldn't call it a sour.
But it has, I think it just has a little bit of that slight tart element from that raspberry.
Yeah.
But it's delicious.
What do you think about it, Evan?
Yeah.
Tell me what you really think.
Well, it's really delicious. Yeah, no, I'm it's fantastic. It's a perfect summer beer.
It is. Yeah,
perfect summer beer. Well, I don't know. What else we got to say on this one? You got some more things to say? You not? I mean, it's getting kind of late, and
we're gonna keep this short. That's the plan. So
it looks like we might actually succeed at doing that. So
okay. Well, I mean, I guess I would say this is, whatever you're doing, it can be a good place to start. It's like, what do I think about this? Or what do you think about this? It can open up a conversation. It can open up a thought in your mind. It can open up a conversation with another person. It can be a tool you use in your art. Like, as an actor, you might go like, well, what does the character think about this? Or what is, as a writer, it might help, maybe even as a filmmaker, working with an actor, maybe it will help you create conflict in a situation. And it's just about, I think this is about having a tool where you go like, where do we put the attention? Mm-hmm. What would be a good place to put the attention? And based on the question you asked, like, fill in the blank, what do I think about blank? Where do I want to put my attention is essentially what you're saying. And put your attention there. And it's magical. See what happens. And sometimes you don't need to put a lot of attention, like in the Linda Darlow case where it's an effective acting tool. Do I like the person or not like the person? What do I think about him? And it's like, I like him. I don't like him. You don't have to go further than that. In that case, it can be that simple. In another case where it's like, what do I think about, going to Europe or going to Australia or going to Africa, or something like that. That might be more investigation, might be a deeper question, more attention. You might say, well, I'm scared of this. Okay, great. So let's look into that fear. And then you investigate that fear and you see how you go down a rabbit hole of solving things that have just been left kind of, empty. So, and then if you want somebody to join you, say on this travel, you might say, well, what do you think about going to England? Or what do you think about going to Italy? And they might say, well, I'd prefer Italy or whatever. I want to, why? Okay, well, I want to have the nice food. I want to do that. I want to blah, blah, blah. Okay, great. So you you open it up, you start to find each other's interests. It's a magic little tool, and that's kind of why we brought it up, I think.
Yeah, I'm gonna piggyback a little off of that one. Just like the word that you said is like open. You open it up. And I think that's a crucial word in this sort of question, both when you're asking it of others and when you're asking it of yourself. Like, yes, it can function to open up a dialogue, open up a conversation, but also being open, like being truly open yourself, whoever you're asking that question of, whether it's someone else or with yourself. Be open when you do that. And by open, I mean, like, reserve judgment, I think it's, one of my favorite thinkers and philosophers of all time is Jiddu Krishnamurti. And he had shared the sentiment that the highest form of intelligence was to observe oneself without judgment. But I think it's to be able to observe others as well. To observe, I think that, you go deeper into it, to observe oneself and to observe others starts to become a very similar thing. But to do that without judgment is true openness. And then there's an even greater level of attention that becomes available to you, and with that, I think there's greater vulnerability, there's greater potential for connection, at finding creative solutions to problems. There's all kinds of things. So I guess, it's sort of, I guess I'm capping this off with a bit of like a PSA on this question that we've started off with, which is like, when you ask this question, do it with complete openness in every sense of the word, and see what appears. Thanks for listening to the show. If you got something out of this, if you feel it improved your life or your journey in any way, please take a moment to subscribe, leave a review, or share the episode.
You can also support us on Patreon, where we have tons of great bonuses. You are the ones that make the show possible and help us to thrive. Thank you for joining us.